in with some introductions. So I'll go first. My name is Tanya, and I've been working at Team Taylor for just over a year. As you can hear from my accent, even though I am located in London at the moment, I'm South African. But yeah, it would be great to hear where you guys are all located from. We've got an Australian over here as well, so we've got that going too. But yeah, so let's kick it off to all our awesome panel today. So Faye, would you like to go first?
Well, thank you very much for having me with you today. So my name's Faye Walsh. I am from Resource Solutions and Robert Walters. So we're a global recruitment consultancy and recruitment outsourcing consultancy. My role at the company is Global Innovation Director, and I also head up our advisory team as well. So it's lovely for me to be part of this webinar because at this time of year, we are all about thinking about what the trends are going to be for this year and how they'll impact us. We look at them specifically through a recruitment lens first off. So perhaps that's the slant I'll be bringing to you, recruitment and techie lens of trends.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Faye. We've got two Roberts. So today we'll start with Robert Rimage.
Yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, great to be here as well. Yeah, Rob Rimage. I'm the founder of IntelliHR, so we're a software as a service, HR, people management, data analytics platform. We've been in the market, I suppose, for 5 years and looking after businesses all around the world, as small as 20 people that employ, all the way through to 7,000 to 10,000 sort of size organisations. Yeah, my passion is obviously people and certainly sort of analytics, but yeah, following, I suppose, the trends in around sort of people management and what businesses are doing. Also, as a leader of IntelliHR, we employ 100 people around the world. You know, it's certainly been interesting, particularly over the last couple of years, navigating the challenges that we've all faced. So, you know, hopefully bring a different sort of perspective in terms of, yeah, leading a business globally, but also HR technology, but also, yeah, HR practices. That's myself.
Thanks, Rob. Rob Green.
Hi, thanks for having me again, and nice to meet you. I'm Rob Green. I'm the founder and director of a company called RecTech. I've worked in the recruitment space for 15 years through a range of agency, TA, RPO and technology roles as well. And over the last decade, I've been helping people to find and implement the right recruitment technologies for their needs. A couple of years ago, I founded the company I run now, which is called RecTech. We help organizations to identify, procure and implement the right tech. We do that through a range of consultancy services, and also we've developed a unique vendor intelligence platform called RecTech Compare. We're really proud to partner with Team Taylor, so I appreciate you having me here today. I'm really looking forward to, you know, to sharing my thoughts and predictions about the, you know, HR tech space in 2022.
Thanks so much, Rob. We're really happy to have you here as well. And of course, you know, our webinar today will be concentrating on the predictions of HR trends for 2022. And as we enter 2022, I think like how we work, where we work, who we work, and even why we work, as well as the technologies, as Rob's pointed out, so are constantly changing and evolving. And it's a really exciting time, really, to be working in HR, and also very challenging and demanding at the same time. And I think during these last 2 years, especially with COVID, we've had to be reactive and put out a lot of fires. People are hoping that, you know, moving forward, we can learn from this a bit more and be proactive instead of reactive. What do you guys feel are the main changes from 2020 and 2021 for HR that will, you know, stick around for the long term? Anyone want to take that one?
Remote working is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the shift that we've seen working in an office from 9 till 5 and the flexibility that remote working has brought. Yeah, done a lot of research around this and have some interesting stats. And I know, Rob, you're going to be talking about this a bit later on as well. But for me, really, the biggest shift has been, you know, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the shift to remote working.
Yeah, I think an adding to that is probably the perspective that employers actually have around employees. I think the pandemic sort of taught every business how important people are, and also actually brought their personal lives into, or their work kind of went into their personal lives and back the other way. So with that, the very big focus on wellness, you know, has changed the perspective that employers actually look at, you know, just even that sort of flexibility that they actually offer, and the tools that they actually provide to make sure that they're actually looking after their team members.
Yeah. Definitely, I agree with all of those. I think the one that I'm going to cover at the, thinking about what's impacted us most is our clients who are huge global enterprises have also reacted through the last few years to the increasing need for diversity and inclusion and equity within their businesses. So a lot of the work that we've been doing has actually been focusing on how to help our clients and organizations around us reach their goals to actually achieve a more diverse and equitable workplace. And a lot of that for us has been rethinking the impact that recruitment has in that space, not just to bring people into the business, but actually helping to keep the right people in those places. So that's been a huge focus, I think, that has been a wonderful byproduct of the pandemic in the last couple of years.
Yeah. What top trends do you guys see that obviously have happened within those 2 years that will be emerging now in the upcoming year? Any like new trends that will come out of 2022?
For me, I think it's probably going back to where Rob started with the remote and distributed workforces. The way you actually manage performance and the way you actually identify top performers in your business is a lot more difficult. So it's no more management by site. And with that, the identification of talent by site just doesn't happen either. So, very results and very sort of skills. And probably the big thing that I think, particularly organizations need to pay attention to is how are they actually developing their team members and actually how are they responding to, I suppose, changes coming through that they need to actually develop and skill their workforce to. So to me, I think it is, the world is very different. We're dealing with distributed workforces, whether it's hybrid, whether it's in office or whatever, and just actually keeping visibility over that at all angles in terms of, talent and wellness and so forth is really something that needs to, be focused upon.
It's still we're still really discovering in that space. I mean, I wouldn't say that everybody's figuring out hybrid work right now. I mean, I'm based in London at the moment, and we are currently under advice to not work in the office. Luckily, we've all been through that, and colleagues around the world in our organisation are still in a hybrid situation between work and office. But I don't think I've spoken to many organisations who've come to a full decision about what hybrid working will look like in the future. It's clear to us that candidates and employees are asking for flexibility. And I think that will be one of the biggest themes that we're seeing is how do organizations adapt to delivering this flexibility in a way that keeps our people happy and engaged, but also allows us to achieve our goals.
Yeah, I read an article from YouGov recently that said that 57% of British workers want to be able to work from home. And I think, as a result of the pandemic, we have seen a bottom-up movement of people away from the office. And I think in the main, the data proves it's a good thing. There was another poll, I think, conducted by Hoxby, and that showed that 71% of managers were surprised by the productivity of remote working. And I think 52% of respondents in their poll basically said that their teams have been even more productive at home than when they're in the office. And I guess there's a number of reasons for that. There's distractions you get, conversations started, meetings all over the place. It does allow you to kind of sit down and focus. I spend about 12 hours a day sat in this chair and I get a lot done. I've also spent 20 years working in an office, and I think there is a difference. I personally found it really productive working from home. So I don't know how you guys feel about it.
But I know that
I was just going to say, we saw it go the other way as well, where we had people working longer and actually harder, and the focus of their work was more so in their little laptops and screens versus having more sort of interactions with people and so forth. So it can also become problematic in the sense of an employer loving that, and certainly everyone loves high productivity and so forth, but the impact also then on people from a burnout perspective and that sort of general wellness. But I totally agree, the flexibility is awesome, and even at the moment to be able to be around my kids during the day here and there, where if I was at work they wouldn't see me sometimes for a couple of days because they'll be in bed before I actually get home. So there's a lot of benefits sort of just in your personal life as well.
Definitely. I also had was going to say, I had a lockdown baby, you know, it's been so nice to be able to work from home. I'm in a building at the bottom of the garden, so I'm kind of away from the home. But, you know, whenever there's a new food tried or, you know, the first steps are taken, it's lovely just to be steps away from the house to be really close to that. And you couldn't do that if you were in an office. So no. I don't think I'd ever want to go back to working in an office, but I can see that hybrid working is probably something that most organizations are going to adopt.
Yeah, in varying degrees, I guess.
Right.
It's kind of interesting that I think what is clear from the stats clearly is we were wondering whether the Great Resignation was actually a thing, whether it was just America. But recently we've been looking at the stats to see the impact across the UK and then burgeoning across Europe now. And it's clear that the number of voluntary quits have now reached really quite, well, they're record-breaking highs really. And it's clear that, like you said, a lot of people who have been stuck at home or working productively from home have had a big old rethink about their priorities in their lives. And it's clear now that we've got an opportunity to either retain our staff if we can align our priorities and our culture, and attract the right people to our businesses who are excited about leaving and making a new choice for themselves right now. So it's actually, I feel like it's an optimistic time for a realignment, but you know, I'm in innovation, so I like being in a space of change. Not everyone's as comfortable, huh?
Oh, we're talking about the HR industry here as well, but you know, if you look at kind of the wider working market, there are a lot of people that can't possibly work from home. There was another study, I think, conducted by McKinsey, and they basically looked at 2,000 tasks, 800 jobs over 9 countries, and it showed that more than 20% of the workforce could work remotely 3 to 5 days a week and be as effective as they were when they were at home. And I think that's 3 to 4 times higher than it was pre-pandemic. So that does show that, you know, a lot of people have the opportunity to remote work and remain effective. But I do also see that there's an element of analog working that will need to be, well, it will persist, right?
Yeah.
I think just adding to that, still people need to look at the work environments they can have at home, and not everybody's actually nicely set up to be able to comfortably work from home. So, you know, again, like when you think about that from an employer perspective, well, you know, do they have all the equipment that they actually need? Do they have the actual right desks? And do they have the environment where, you know, they're not sitting at the kitchen table and so forth? Yeah, there's still work to be done to help people actually even be able to properly work at home, versus, you know, coming to an office and have everything sort of sitting there ready for them to be able to use.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think another point that will come in here would be mental health. So I've spoken to quite a lot of people, especially now coming back from, you know, December holidays and things like that. A lot of people didn't have, you know, they didn't go away anywhere, or they just stayed at home. And it was kind of feels like they didn't get a holiday, or they didn't get a break from work because they don't have that escape from their office, which is now their home. So that brings in a whole, you know, other aspects. Because even for myself, like I know, like I'm definitely pro remote work. I'm so productive, you know, all those hours that you spend traveling, the extra expense, you just have so much time to kind of organize your day and your work. So I just think it definitely brings on productivity for most. But I do worry about, you know, that aspect of like mental health and how that affects people when they don't seem to have that break. I find myself working until, gosh, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. sometimes, can't separate myself from the computer. And I think, yeah, that's definitely one aspect that's hard. What do you guys think about that?
It's ironic, isn't it, that at a time where people really need a break, the travel industry collapses and we all get locked down and stay at home.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Wellness is certainly one of the huge burgeoning segments that I'm going to talk a little bit about, the tech that's getting investment, that's supporting these trends. And wellness is receiving billions at the moment in terms of new startup funding, because clearly it's something that the organizations need to get on top of. How do you look at the, you know, the well-being of your workforce when you can't really even see them and check in? But I think a lot of discussion around wellness and hybrid also crosses over into the culture and training perspective. We're focusing a great deal on the skills you need for the future of work. And a lot of skills are becoming almost redundant. And new skills are required. We've got a skills report that I can show you later that will show some of the newer skills that people are wanting to upskill to. And so how do you provide an environment as an employer to reflect culture remotely versus in the office? It's a good deal easier to breed a culture of learning and a culture of openness to learning if you've actually got an environment of sharing where you can see others learning, learn new things from them. I don't know that anyone's reached the answer yet, but I can see the polar sides of the discussion starting to emerge from, you know, clients and colleagues who are working on the West Coast of America versus some other more traditional businesses, maybe in Australia and Europe, who are, you know, you've got Goldman Sachs saying, no, get back to work. Everyone in the office 5 days a week. This is the only way that we can create our healthy culture or our good culture. But there's plenty of remote natives emerging, aren't there? Remote first. This is the way forward for some. So it'll be an interesting few years to see how that levels out. Have you seen that? Just to jump in, quick question there, because obviously working for Resource Solutions, you work with lots of clients that recruit, right? I was thinking from that remote first mentality. Have you seen a lot of organisations that have, you know, decided to use that as an opportunity to increase the size of their talent pool? So, for example, instead of recruiting somebody that's based here in the UK, we're saying, well, okay, now if it's a remote first, or we're taking that kind of mindset, why do they need to be in the UK? Why can't they be in the US? Why can't they be in Australia? Exactly. And there are a lot of organisations that are analysing their ability, you know, the legitimacy really of saying you need to be associated with an office. And there are definitely programs running at you know, some large organisations that we know, where they're trying to look at which of those types of roles that are really suited to being remote. But before they can do that, there's a huge technical discussion. I know that there'll be a lot of people on the call today who are HR professionals who are thinking, well, what tax regime does that put this worker under? And you know, how can we actually administrate for that? So I think over the last year, we saw organisations take a good hard look at legal and HR. A lot of pressure was on these departments to think, how could we facilitate this in principle? How do we allow someone who is in Denver to wander off to Texas for half the time? And how does that impact the tax we pay them? Right. Boring, but necessary. And the other things that are sort of springing to mind as well is that people, and we're getting a couple of questions in the chat as well, some people want hybrid working. You know, people like the flexibility of working from home, but at the same time, they like going into an office and getting face time with people and still going out and meeting clients, for example. How do you do that if you take a remote first mentality? And also, I guess at the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on management teams as well, right? How do you manage people if they're kind of dotted all over the place in different time zones? You know, it makes it a lot more challenging. It just brings more challenges into the workplace. But you know, we're learning to, I guess, evolve and adapt the way that we're working, and I think it will continue for a long time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. I think, you know, the slides that you all have prepared will, you know, delve deeper into all of these topics. So I think we'll kick things off with Robert Rimage, if you would like to actually show us your presentation.
Sure. I was going to say, I think we've covered my presentation. So we'll see how we go. It'll be a nice segue.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. With mine, they're probably more so not so much trends or predictions, but thoughts and things to sort of focus on, and maybe a little bit of a different sort of perspective. In my opinion, I don't think there will be a return to the office, and certainly not the way that we actually thought it. I think we've now got an incredible opportunity to reimagine actually how we use our offices, more so as a base for our team members versus a 9-to-5 sort of location. So, you know, I think there was some chat there as well that people still would like to come to work. There are still people that need to come to work and can't work from home as well. So, you know, it's a facility, whether it's a fixed office or a WeWork or a collaboration sort of space, but we still all need sort of premises and a place to go, whether it's at home or somewhere specifically. Bringing people together to collaborate, to socialize, if it's not every day, or if it's not once a week or once a fortnight, you know, once a month. And even remote first businesses still mandate to bring people together for extended periods of time so they can actually collaborate and build relationships, which are really important from that perspective. we're an interesting business in the sense that we operate globally. We're in 4 different sort of countries and with team members, and we've basically spun up, I suppose, all our team members overseas all through the pandemic. So they've all been employed remote first, and they've all been actually, we've never met each other until we all come together actually late November, December, which was quite sort of cool. But yeah, I think if we start accepting the fact that if our workers work where it is actually sort of flexible and you can work anywhere to actually complete it, I think there won't be a return to the office. Supporting that, and probably the statement I've sort of said for a little while, where we're now almost into our 3rd year of what everyone thought was a 3-month pandemic. So there was that initial sort of reaction and responding, and we'll get past this, and first wave, second wave, third wave, and different sort of iterations. So from that sort of perspective, every business and every person really needs to have been sort of agile and constantly adapting and changing. And as I said, some businesses were deeply impacted, and some businesses actually thrived, but a lot of businesses have really had a lot to navigate and actually change. So the success, I think, sort of moving forward to maintaining strong agility is self-organising autonomous teams, and with that is thinking differently around job design, around team design. And a good example I can sort of talk about within our own business is within our engineering team, and we broke them into small domains, small teams that are all sort of self-sufficient and can operate as part of a bigger sort of unit. And that's possible across all areas and what we've done across our entire business. So being able to have, and even geographically sort of based self-organising teams allows them to be responsive to whatever's happening sort of locally, also manage what they need to do to achieve the organisational goals. So yeah, the structures, the organisational design, the role design, a very big task, I think, and a really exciting project for HR teams and businesses to think differently around how they glue their organisation together. Building from there, it's all about high performance cultures, and talking about that before, but it's all about trust, transparency, and care. And for me, it's always been around purpose, and everyone needs to, I suppose, be on board with what we're actually trying to achieve in our organisations, and that's making workplaces better for the people within them. And along with that, we've got a really strong people charter around trust and transparency and collaboration, and everyone actually coming to work in an environment where they can actually do their best, and making sure they're providing the same environment for their colleagues. On top of that, it's responsible as an organisation, and a great opportunity for everyone to think sort of around, it's about creating opportunities for meaningful connection. So it used to be something in the office and the social type of things and so forth, but it's thinking differently. How can we actually get people having meaningful connections when they might not necessarily be coming into the office? So there's still team events, there's still things to celebrate in the organisation. So looking for those milestones and looking for those opportunities to bring people together, to celebrate or to connect on both a business but also sort of social level. We have a number of routines we do in our actual own business where once a month we do a showcase, and everyone in the business, each team can present what they're actually working on, and lots of excitement around things that are almost done or coming or whatever. In addition to that, every other sort of fortnight, so to speak, or also once a month, but we do a business update, and we do a very big peer recognition session where all the recognition that's being shared through the course of the month, each team member who's actually given recognition to the other one actually reads it out, and it's a really big celebration of how people work together and actually support each other, and just the little things that they actually do to help, which is again a really good thing that we actually do for connection. And then finally, I suppose it's really just about communicate. And, you know, if everyone knows what's actually happening at every point in time, they can always make the right decisions, and, you know, they don't feel like they're left out, and they're part of something. So, you know, so from that sort of perspective, particularly in my role, it's been really important to be always communicating and repeating messaging, so that you know, everyone, you know, knows we're going in a direction, and, you know, what to do, you know, in different situations. And even now with the rise of Omicron, so we've had to adapt all our policies and, you know, look at how we actually support people running through there. But it's just been continually responsive and communicating.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. And I would almost wonder whether people on the call might say, well, you know, you run a medium-sized enterprise at the moment, must be easy for you. But I think it's important even to the hugest organizations that they react quickly and communicate well. We had a webinar last year thinking about the future world of HR and the new world of work, and PwC joined us, and they actually shared with us some of the communication that they launched literally in the middle of the pandemic, when everyone had transferred to remote working. And they simply put out these very simple flyers, which really spoke to the things, they called them 12 things they valued about remote working, which just set out the etiquette and the expectations of everyone, to make it clear for everyone that it was okay to have home life going on in the background. And don't worry if it runs across your screen, but perhaps, you know, dress to look presentable. If you're seeing clients, dress as you would in the office, but, you know, be comfortable and try and make sure you maintain those good working arrangements. And number 12 was togetherness. Even when we're apart, we're all in this together. And just simply stating those values, like you said in your slide there, is so important.
And I think adding to that, it's just trust. You know, trust that people are doing, you know, their role. And, you know, if anything, again, it's one of the big things hopefully a lot of businesses have taken out of that they can trust their team members, and they don't need to know where they are every minute of the day from that perspective. But yeah, and finally, and within our own business, over 60% of our team members now have been employed remotely, and you know, so from that sort of perspective, I think there's this whole rise of remote natives. And when you kind of think about it, when we're sort of first going into the pandemic, it was about everyone in the office, and then these few new people that have been onboarded, you know, sort of remotely. Now there's more people that have been onboarded remotely than people that actually have technically grown up within the office, and with that comes, you know, a whole bunch of things. One, you know, they've adapted to how they actually work within the organization, and how they network, and how they connect and communicate, and how they've actually built relationships. And, you know, we've certainly seen our teams, you know, in the UK and in Northern America, just do an absolute awesome job. And, you know, there's great leadership in those environments, but they've done a brilliant job of actually coming together as a team, and really working hard towards a common goal, yet they've never actually met each other. So again, when I recently met them all on a trip, it was just the most exciting thing to see, you know, such brilliant people that are really passionate, and do a brilliant job. So but yeah, they're skilled digital natives, and because they've also built their careers from a remote perspective, just that sort of flexibility in how they actually, you know, I suppose execute work is very different. So I think that's something to hold on to, and something to pay attention to, because again, back to my first slide, I just don't think there's this permanent return to the office where everyone sits there 9 to 5 and so forth. So that flexibility, that different way of actually working, and it does come back to how we organise our work, and also how we support our team members. But that's still the big thing ahead in the year to come.
Have you found you know, a connection here to kind of, you know, generational? You know, I'm thinking about the people that I think benefit most from remote working are probably those that already have good experience in an office, and they know what they're doing. They've, you know, got some experience under their belt. But then I guess the people that would be easier to slip into a sort of remote working program would be those sort of, you know, Gen Z and millennials that are used to having a smartphone in their hand and are really used to technology. It's probably easier for them from a cultural point of view, and to kind of shift into that digital world, but at the same time, they're the people that really need you know, someone by their side, shadowing them, showing them what life is like in the workplace. So for me, there's a whole kind of generational thing here as well. I feel like it's about getting the balance right, and I think that's why, just going back to hybrid working, we were talking about earlier, I think that's why hybrid working will persist, because there's a need to be in an office for some cases.
Absolutely.
Oh, I definitely think, and that's why I think the office becomes a base, and it becomes a place for people to come to work together, to share, to learn, you know, those experiences. And there's a lot of really cool technology, you know, out there where people can actually learn, you know, through, I suppose, you know, for example, like your gongs and choruses. I don't know if you use that technology, which are call recording and some, you know, sophisticated sort of technology and around that. But, you know, people growing up sort of learning through watching how other people have done it through recording, you know, it's becoming quite sort of interesting. But I look at my 10-year-old, and if he wants to learn something, he gets onto YouTube, finds a tutorial on it, and then off he goes and does it. And, you know, so when, you know, to your point around, you know, I suppose the demographics, you know, there's that cohort of people, you know, entering the workforce, that it's that just-in-time sort of learning and working out how to do something, and brave enough to go ahead and actually do it as well. So yeah, it's certainly interesting to see how that will evolve.
Lots of really good points in the chat as well about you know, Stephanie talking about organizations needing to understand what their people need. It's about asking and listening a little bit about what you might need. And really interesting point there from
Go on, have a go.
Oh no, I was actually going to say, Stephanie again was just saying, let's encourage the people who aren't digital natives to, you know, help them reap the benefits of you know, working in the office and not. Yeah, I haven't read the rest of them yet, Rob.
I was working out how to pronounce Mika Stein, I think is probably the name.
Yeah.
It's a very unusual name. Well, in England anyway.
Ooh. But their flexibility makes places more diverse, which is absolutely right.
I agree.
I think, and this is where, you know, not so much the pendulum has actually swung, but again, I think businesses have understood that, you know, they want to create environments where people can actually give their best. And I think it's not about being dictatorial in terms of how you do the work. It's about providing the flexibility, the options for people to actually choose and organize themselves around actually what works best for them to actually, you know, one, I suppose, do the work, but to fit it in terms of how they best can do the work. And, you know, the office, it doesn't matter if it's a fixed office or, you know, even our environments in North America and UK, we've got our teams working in WeWorks, but you know, they could choose one over this location one week and somewhere else, you know, so it's actually going to work where is actually convenient and makes the most sense for them to actually do that. And whether it's in an office in a particular location or if it's at home, you know, that's I think the flexibility that people these days, you know, deserve in a manner of speaking, and we can actually, as organisations, provide that to them.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Robert. And Faye, I know that you also have some nice stats for us. So feel free to share your screen when you're ready as well.
Amazing. Well, I am gonna, I guess, shift things up a bit and talk a little bit in terms of different trends when my computer will let me access what's going on. There we go. So can you all see that?
Yeah, perfect.
So actually, yeah, changing the discourse a bit. I think some of the things that we've really looked at, you know, some through a recruitment lens, some through an HR lens, we've noticed in our clients over the last 2 years how much the BLM movement, as well as the pandemic, and it's sort of it's had very different impacts on different groups of people around the world, and it's catalyzed companies to commit to new diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. A lot of our clients around the world have come out with statements that they want to try and make their workforce more inclusive, and they're at the CEO level. And so what we found is over the last year and a half, our clients have been coming to us, the head of HR, saying, how do I achieve this? How do I actually make actionable, meaningful change out of this? Because there's a lot of discussion in the space of diverse hiring and DE&I, but there's not always, you know, quick fixes to this. And so we need to start working on actionable impact that we can make. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done this year to help our clients in that space and give you some examples. And then I actually thought it would be fun to talk about the 5 main trends that we've been looking at in terms of making decisions with HR data and recruitment data, internal mobility and filling skills gaps, networking actually here to stay, although might look a little different post-pandemic, wellness, and actually surveillance for a bit of a talking point. And I'm going to show you some of the tech that's emerging in the space that we're keeping our eye on, not so that you can dash out and buy it or anything like that, because there are new startups necessarily, you might like to, but just to give you an idea of what's coming and how the tech world's starting to try and satisfy those trends. And if we've got time, maybe we'll talk about future skills later on. But how to help our clients who want to hire a more equitable and inclusive range of people within, or a more representative range of people to their business. We've actually developed an audit that we've helped some of our clients with this year, and we look at how you recruit in the hiring process through 7 different lenses, including gender, disability, age, and faith, as you can see on the screen here. And I thought I'd show you some of the things that we've learned through really interacting and auditing every single touch point of the recruitment processes that we look at. And there are a lot of examples where we're bringing kind of unintended or bias to the recruitment process. We talk about it as innocent ignorance, because if you don't know you're doing it, how can you fix it? So let's try and bring that to the point. So you may all have recruitment processes that work beautifully on Apple phones, for example. But if you are not testing your recruitment websites or your careers websites on Android as well, you actually might be more likely to be disadvantaging Black candidates who often have who have a favour for Android technology. Women typically, especially during the pandemic, are finding that they've got up to 15 hours less free time a week. So if your hiring process is lengthy and requires a lot of question and answers, you might be having a disproportionately negative impact on women. And how many of you out there are still asking your candidates to let you know what their current salary is as part of the application process? We're finding that a lot of organizations still are. But did you know that when you take an understanding of a candidate's existing salary, you're inheriting what could have been previous potential bias, and that might have a negative impact, particularly on women and Black women, and perpetuate some old corporate pay gaps that you might not want to perpetuate. We also look at how readable the job ads are, and it seems so simple to think about, are you actually able to communicate with your people? Rob Rimage was talking there about communicate. Think about the people you're trying to attract to your business, and think about the job ads you're writing. We have done many of these studies and found that the typical job ad in tech and financial services is so full of jargon that it's more difficult to read than a typical law document. You really want to be aiming at much lower down the readability scale, because actually only just over half of people that you might be trying to attract can really even understand what you're asking them to do. Huge impact in your ability to make the recruitment process inclusive. What we found as well has been some extraordinary targets about, we mentioned how many of you might ask current salary. 82% of the organizations that we've audited were asking for current salary. Well done, Ellie Lancaster, who's saying, what are you looking for? Which is a more appropriate way of asking. We also look at another part of the process, and thinking about inclusivity. It doesn't matter what lens you're looking through the recruitment process at, but it makes us feel more included if we see people on your careers website that are like us. but only 8% of organisations that we've audited actually represent employees with visible disabilities on their careers pages. And that's something that you can immediately change when you're thinking about accurately reflecting the communities that you're trying to represent in your organisation. So some of those points might help you to spark some interest. But yeah, so as a result of wanting to help our clients really reach their goals, we've been doing these inclusivity audits, which actually have won us some awards this year. So we're really pleased with that. But we've also launched a new talent pool as well called Rejoin, where we're focusing on talent that's returning to the world of work after a period of absence. And that could be for any parenting absence. It could be because, you know, they went off and did, you know, a international sports star placement for the last 7 years. Who knows? But these people who've been away from the office are actually an extraordinary resource for our businesses. And we're actually now connecting employers with pools of people who are returning to the workplace, who bring all sorts of new and additional diversity dimensions back to the workplace. So that's how we're trying to create solutions. Let's just look at emerging trends, like I mentioned as well. The year closed off in 2020, which was the last funds I have, and there was more than 5 billion in investment dollars being poured into tech startups in HR. And where is that funding going? A lot of it on talent acquisition, but the majority in the human capital market space. And you can see, unsurprisingly, through the pandemic, that new solutions are coming to market that really help that collaboration and comms piece that Rob Rimage was talking about there. And learning and wellness is a huge part. But let's look at some of the, I thought these were fun examples of recent startups that are really raking in the funding in response to the trends. HR data, one of the, you know, the biggest trends that's not going away. We want to be able to make decisions based on the data that we hold. Here's an interesting startup called Equitable. But what we're finding is interesting about this, not just because it's actually thinking about how you look at HR data and pin it to other data in the organization, but they're looking at the areas that we really need more data in. Things like attrition, how and when and why workers are quitting. But what's interesting to me is also that they're looking at how performance is linked to your HR data. So it's taking, you know, who and how you got into, you know, your organization and thinking about what value you're bringing to that organization, who are those high performers, and how helping you understand how to really calculate what good looks like for your organization. As I said, there are many of these tools out there, but data certainly is something we're all continuing to look at. I don't know whether anyone's heard of Gloat. It's a huge American company in the space of, it's a talent marketplace really, but we're thinking about skills, upskilling and learning and development in this part of the trends. So I'll explain quickly what Gloat does. Imagine you're a large organization, you give Gloat to every single person in your organization. And what you're going to do with that is actually create a record of what skills those people have in your organization. And you do it by asking your teams to actually think about where they are now and where their career path might go. And you can see here in the example, the tool actually provides potential career paths for people within that organization. So if you're an IT delivery manager right now, you can look at the skills you have versus the skills you need to develop in the organization to become the next step on your career journey, head of project management maybe. And it will show you've got skills gaps. You need to develop more skills in project management and you know, software development lifecycle. So how do you do those? Well, actually, you can close the gap by getting a mentor or taking on a project within our organization, or you can do the learning and development pathways. But what that gives in terms of powerful data for organizations when you're thinking about how skills are transforming over the next 5 to 10 years is it gives your organization a digital record of what skills you have in your organization. And so you can see here that the organization may be looking for more people in legal and leadership with particular skills, but you can see the supply that you have in your organization, and you can see oversupply as well. So you can start thinking, how do I recruit? How do I reskill my people to move them to where I need them to be? So this skills gap piece is becoming digitally solved by these new tools. Gloat exists in a segment with another interesting startup called Fuel 50, which is doing similar things. But this is a real category to watch in terms of upskilling and gaining a digital record of the skills that you need in your organization to thrive in the future. Networking is the third space. Most of us network on LinkedIn, I think, probably. But you'll also be aware of tools like Glassdoor. And if you're not, Glassdoor is where employees leave you a review about how happy they are working for your organization that everyone can check before they start considering working for you. And here's almost a mix of the two in a new startup called Blind, which interested us a great deal because Blind allows you to reach out to people who are currently working at the organization and give a live review. So connect with people who already work there and actually ask them what it's like to work there. So we were looking at this on behalf of some of our clients and saying, well, are you aware of what people are saying about you? And when you're thinking right now about how to attract talent and reduce attrition from your business in a time of the great, the great resignation, you might want to start thinking about the data that's within your organization on Glassdoor and what's being shared externally, because it might be impacting your ability to hire new people. Mental and well-being basically at work. Here's an interesting spin on this. It's certainly one of the biggest growing segments. Unmind's really interesting because it looks at measuring, it's almost the ask and answer, measure the mental health of your workplace, but really interesting in terms of the analytics that it allows, because it actually starts to allow you to ask employees how they're feeling, but benchmark that into their performance data. So how are the happiness and performance of your workforce correlating? That for me fills a lot of the topics that we were just talking about. Really interesting. And the last one is a bit of a talking point here is connection. We've talked about remote and digital hybrid working. We've had a lot about remote onboarding and remote hiring. Connect Team's an interesting one because it's marketing itself as a resource for small to medium-sized enterprises, and you can go and buy their communication network, and that will enable you to connect your people to work anywhere they want in the world at any time. But pay attention to the background, because actually one of the maybe most ethically worrying features that it's plugging is ensure employees are where they should be. Always know who clocked in, when and where. And when you think about the news that we've been seeing over the ethics, perhaps, of surveillance tech, you maybe want to ask yourself, is that perhaps the right way to be going? But there's my little talking points for now.
That is really interesting. I particularly like being a bit of a tech geek. I really like seeing lots of new technology platforms, and it actually feeds really well into what I'm going to talk about, because there are so many new technologies coming onto the market. And I think also integration is going to be a big talking point as well. And when you start getting lots of new tech providers like this, Gloat, for example, that you just showed us, I could see how that would very easily benefit from an integration to an ATS or HRIS, for example.
Absolutely. That's exactly where they exist. Yeah. Go ahead and tell us about your trends, though, because otherwise people won't get to hear.
Sure, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So mine is, unsurprisingly, a bit more focused on HR tech, being a recruitment technology provider, as we are. Hopefully you can see my screen. So the first thing, I've only got 3 predictions. I've tried to keep this deliberately really, really short, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is digital transformation. It's been happening for over 25 years. I think it's important for people to understand that HR processes are, and HR tech are intrinsically linked. The coronavirus pandemic has forced us all to change the way that we operate. We've been talking about that for the last 45 minutes. And I think many organizations have needed to review whether their existing technologies are still the best fit for their business and their new way of working. From our perspective as a company that works with tech platforms, a lot of our partners' focuses have been on solutions. And I think How can tech make certain elements of the HR environment better, safer, fairer, and also more effective? And we've covered a lot of that already, but we've also seen that for every solution, you need to have a problem. And this last year or two has brought lots and lots of novel problems, hasn't it? So yeah, that kind of leads into, my second point is the evolution of HR tech. The change in how we operate has forced a lot of solution providers to really up their game. Not only are we seeing the pace of technology innovation changing, everything's getting a lot faster. It's much easier now, I think, for technology providers to build. Tech's become easier to build, right? It's got quicker and easier to build. So with lots of new problems to solve, I think lots of new solutions are being introduced, and some of these solutions are very niche, designed to tackle specific HR issues, like some of the ones that you just mentioned. If you rewind the clock, say 10 or 15 years, there were much fewer technology providers in the marketplace, and they all tried to do this as opposed to, tackling a specific problem. And what that really means in the technology industry is that you might be solving lots of problems, but you can only solve them to a certain degree because you're not really focusing on solving particular issues. Also, I think, the new providers that are entering the market with these niche products are very heavily reliant on integrating. So my third prediction is around the growth of integration. Integration is rapidly becoming a primary focus for a lot of vendors in the market. And I've also seen integration tools popping up like, Microsoft Power Automate, Zoho Flow, and my favorite one, Zapier. I don't know if you guys have come across Zapier, but it's a really powerful tool for connecting platforms together. I think they have something like 3,000 apps at the moment. It's a growing number all the time, but you can basically, using a mixture of triggers and endpoints, you can say when X happens over here in this platform, make this happen over here in this platform. And it's actually, even for people that are not developers and don't necessarily have a really good technical understanding, it's a platform that enables you to make those connections. Connecting these solutions together allows us to save an enormous amount of time and dramatically increase the efficiency of what we're doing. So I predict for 2022 that integration is going to continue to grow at a rate of knots. And I think you're going to probably see that space becoming more competitive. There's going to be more organizations like Zapier popping up. But what that means for us is that it's going to be for us as technology consumers, it's going to be much easier for us to try and really leverage our full tech stack as opposed to having dependencies on a couple of larger pieces of software. The other, I guess the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I guess this is also a bit of a plug for what we're doing in the market as well. Finding the right tech for your business is become increasingly harder because there are so many technology providers in the market alone. The market is saturated with an overwhelming number of solutions. So it's a massive challenge for most organizations, and the procurement process can take a really long time. We did some research around this. We surveyed a number of organizations, and I think 64% of the organizations that we polled said that their selection process to select an ATS took somewhere between 3 and 6 months. And there was also a portion that was significantly longer than that. And that is before you even start an implementation. It's just finding the right provider can take such a long time because there are so many out there. I think it's also worth noting that the risk of choosing the wrong solution is prevalent, and the cost of getting this wrong is insurmountable, can be insurmountable. So in response to this issue in the market, we developed a solution called RecTech Compare, which is a unique vendor intelligence platform. We're really proud to partner with Team Taylor, and we are very focused on helping organizations to quickly and easily identify the right tech. So if you wanted to check it out, that's where I'm going to finish my presentation. But if you wanted to check it out, we have a website, rectech.io. Have a look at that. And for anyone that's looking for technology or just wants some advice on what's available in the market, and do come and have a chat with us.
Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate it. I know we're down to our last 5 minutes, so I think it'll be good to get some questions from the attendees. I did see we've got one under Q&A here to ask: do you think employers should offer support for home setups? And if so, what? What do you guys think?
We had a webinar in 2020 with a load of our VC clients in the West Coast of America, and they said it was entirely normal practice in the West Coast to be providing a package for new joiners and actually sending that package to them on day one, as opposed to even requesting that they would go out and buy it for them. I think where they're thinking remote first is the way forward. I think they're a little bit ahead of us maybe in Europe. What do you think?
I've just to add to that, I've also seen some organizations recently, I actually can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I've seen it a few times recently where organizations, they're actually offering as part of their package, a working from home allowance, to allow you to, to buy equipment for your home and things like that. And also, I guess, to contribute towards things like your energy bills and the utilities that you might spend during the day that you wouldn't otherwise if you were in an office, or even buying tea and coffee,
Yeah, feeling sorry for those who are in just, one bedroom apartments though, like you said earlier. It's not going to stretch to, to a roof for them, is it? Yeah. I mean, in all seriousness, I think that's exactly why we're talking about keeping the offices open for the extra hybrid piece, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely think people need tools to do their work. So whatever they need, we need to provide it. If they're coming into an office, we would provide it. So if they're working from home, we still should provide what they actually need to get their job done. So from that sort of perspective, I absolutely do think we should, and we do.
Yeah, Charlotte actually on the chat just pointed out something that I was going to. Hoffy.com, have you guys heard of them as well? They provide, they provide, they provide different setups and furnitures and things like that for, different tech for working from home purposes. And they're really good and they're coming up quite largely in the market. They definitely saw a gap in the market for something like that. And they've taken advantage of it. So props to Hoffy, that's great. We've got some other questions going on here. So we've got somebody earlier, sorry, let me just find that question. I remember earlier there was a question directed at the also working from home. They were asking, so how do they convince basically their managers for a work from home module to work remotely when a company is putting a stop to that?
Yeah, personally, I think it would be showing the working from home versus the work in the office, and the fact that well, hopefully they can, one, if they're not allowed to work from home, I would personally suggest offering a trial so people can actually demonstrate that they can actually successfully work from home. In absence of that, I'm assuming most businesses recently have been forced to work from home, but being able to actually demonstrate the similarities or the increase in performance. For management, unfortunately it is data and it's demonstration of actually how it actually can work and how it can improve the actual business.
I think managing, not only managing people that are working remotely, but also measuring their effectiveness has become trickier as well, right? How do you manage high performance? How do you communicate high performance? Because I think that term in itself, isn't it, over the last couple of years has changed. What does high performance mean now? Because we're all working in such a different way that it's become very difficult to measure.
I think someone actually earlier made a point which I thought was brilliant, where it's not about performance being time in the office. It's about output. So for businesses that can't actually realize or actually understand what people are actually generating, that's where you come back to organizational design and role design and goal setting and having for want of a better word, but good sort of performance processes, and they're quite sort of simple, just in around goal setting, expectations and delivery, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at how your data on engagement from your engagement surveys matches up against your performance data as well when you cross correlate those two set of stats.
It comes back to what the business actually sees as important to them as well, and even you can sort of look at, well, most businesses care about general happiness, so whether it's an employee net promoter score or general sort of engagement and so forth, but there are actually other sort of measures that can also be provided, I suppose, to support those sort of differences.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where you don't have a number of working hours in the contract, but you have an obligation to fulfill a certain role?
Oh,
I personally think so. However, the big blocker, I think, probably even globally for that is, legislation and awards and so forth. But, I suppose you look at the Uber models and so forth, where, they're paid per doing something, so to speak. I still think personally there's a really big opportunity for, discrete sort of pieces of work and those sorts of things. But that aside, we've never had timesheets or, per hour. It's this is your role, and these are the dimensions that you actually operate and execute. So I still think, job design still has a really good, I suppose, opportunity for businesses to leverage different work styles.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. I think we've kind of come to the end of our webinar. It's 3 p.m., but I would like to thank, obviously, all of you. Faye, Robert Rimage, Robert Green, thank you so much for joining us today. And we really appreciate your input. And for everybody else watching still, we will be sending out, the presentations as well as contact details and the recording of this webinar later, so you can all catch up. But again, thank you guys so much for today. Really, really interesting.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.